And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balestrieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about some of the latest Patriots roster transactions, going through Steve and I predictions for the season. Different award winners, who we think is going to kind of be the cream of the crop, for the league on both the AFC and NFC. And then also we have to talk about the season opener against the Philadelphia Eagles, which is really exciting. So happy to dive into that. First things first, I do want to mention to please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. Before we dive into everything, Steve, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. I can't believe it. We're talking about week one of the NFL season for the 12th straight year.
Yep. It's been a long time coming, but I am excited. I'm sure all 32 fan bases are excited, and you should be excited. You know, if you're a football fan. I mean, I know that obviously there are certain teams who are going to feel like they have a better chance of doing something, but I will say this, Steve, and it is the truth. Okay, you really never know how a season's going to quite go. I mean, and because there are injuries that come into play, which are, natural, and there are players that come out of nowhere in a good and bad way. And you don't know what a team, right now, I mean, depending on what, I guess, prognostication that you look at, the Patriots have one of the, 1 to 2 or 3 hardest schedules in the entire league, given last year's winning percentage and, combined win total. But you don't know, how it's really going to turn out. I mean, I think the AFC East is poised for a really, really strong year. But, and the Patriots are going to have a tough road to hoe. I totally believe that. But you also don't really know, Steve, how things are going to play itself out.
Exactly. I mean, all these prognosticators, it's all on paper. Nobody's proved anything yet. I mean, one of the teams that's penciled in, right, for the Super Bowl again is the Philadelphia Eagles. And, they've had a lot of changes. So no one really knows yet. It's all going to have to play out. And as you said, injuries play a huge role in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate part of the game, but it's part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually the two healthiest teams that are standing at the end. It's not always the most talented team on paper. Health plays a big role in all of this, and we'll see how it all plays out. But I'm excited for the season. I mean, football season's back starting tonight, and the Patriots start on Sunday, and I'm excited for the Patriots season. I know a lot of fans aren't. I see a lot of really gloom and doomers out there, but I'm excited for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you should, everyone should be excited, and there's a lot to talk about from a Patriots standpoint. And, we got a couple of people in the comments saying hi. And so hi to those of you who are joining us live. So I do want to talk about the season prediction, Steve, but I think we'd be doing a disservice not talking about the Jack Jones situation. So charges were dropped for him. I think it was community service and some probationary time.
Mm-hmm. A year probation and 48 hours of community service.
Yeah, I think I didn't really think there was going to be any kind of plea deal with the type of lawyer that he hired. I don't know. I can't say I know her personally or anything. I just based on the reports coming out after he hired his lawyer, it was that she is kind of a real kind of bulldog in the courtroom, and that he wasn't going to back down. He was going to fight this thing head on. And certainly there was some risk to it. But I think from the beginning, Steve, a lot of people, it was a guess and an assumption, but a lot of people were feeling more confident in his ability to potentially get off these charges because of the team not releasing him. And if whatever he said from the beginning to the team, there's probably a pretty good reason, probably gave a pretty good reason, I should say, to why he should be, why they should wait to see how it all plays out. Because obviously, you don't want to be associated with that kind of drama off the field. And he did have a pretty good rookie year, an up and down rookie year. But I think if he didn't come to whatever if he didn't bring any kind of defense to the team from the very beginning, he probably wouldn't be here anymore.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if it's a practice squad special teams guy, they'd have released him.
Mm-hmm.
That's just unfortunately the way it is. And yeah, money talks. I mean, he got himself a really good lawyer, and I'm putting her name on speed dial because it didn't look good for him when this stuff all played out. But at the same time, he said from the very beginning that he had a very good reason why this was going to go away, and it seems to have done just that.
Right. Yeah. And I'll say this too. I think he got a very lucky break. I know I'm not the only person who feels like that. Actually, Chris just mentioned that in the comments too, as I'm seeing that right now. I had mentioned something on Twitter yesterday. I had a couple people that were kind of chiming in, saying similar things. I just would say this to Jack Jones, I'm hoping that he's able to make some smarter decisions off the field moving forward because, forget him just being, this as a Patriots fan and him being a Patriots player. I would say that to anyone who has an opportunity to play a professional sport. I mean, you have to be really careful with those kind of things. And he's very lucky he didn't see any jail time at all. So I am wondering if the league is going to step in and say anything, but I don't think so at this point with the charges being dropped. But I would assume if the league was going to do anything, Steve, they probably would before kickoff on Sunday, don't you think?
Well, to do so at this late juncture, I don't think the league will do that. Now, perhaps on Monday after the game, if they're going to levy any kind of suspension, I think it will be that. I mean, pulling the rug out from the team. Obviously, they haven't done anything yet today, so we're almost at the 4:00 transaction wire.
Right.
For them to do that on Friday, 2 days before the game, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think that at this stage, he probably doesn't get anything. To Joel's question, which we're kind of talking about, I would say if they do suspend him, it would probably be in the 2 to 3 game range. But I just don't really see how they would do that at this point. I think they would have already done that. To Chris's point, how could the NFL suspend a player where charges are dropped? They're not. At the end of the day, they're private business, and I think when you're talking about having any player in any kind of legal situation, regardless of the outcome in court, there's a perception around the players, and the league has a certain standard. And so I would say if the league, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, they use the conduct policy.
Right. They fall back on that. And they can. That's their right to do it. They could do that, even though, there was, charges dropped in this case. They definitely could do it if they really wanted to. And they could fall back on that conduct policy and just say, yeah, the charges were dropped and you're not going to prison, but you still put the NFL and guns and headlines and shed a bad light on your team and the league. So that's why they could do that if they wanted to. Again, I don't think they will. As far as season predictions go, Steve, man, I don't know where exactly you want to start. I figure we start from a league standpoint and we get into the Patriots after that. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay, so from a league standpoint, I don't know how exactly you broke everything down. I know we briefly talked about it. I think, I really like, unfortunately, I think the Bills are going to take a step backward. Well, not unfortunately for the Bills, but I think the Bills are going to take a step backwards. Unfortunately for them, I do think they're going to take a small step backwards, and I still think they win the division. I like what the Dolphins have done in the AFC East, Steve, and obviously the Jets, but the Jets are still the Jets to me until I see them prove it otherwise. And I'm really worried about Tua's long-term health with his concussion history. So I still see the Bills as winning the AFC East. As far as the South goes, I like the Jaguars. I still think Trevor Lawrence has finally started to elevate to the level that a lot of people thought he was going to, and I like what Doug Peterson's done over there. The West is crazy, and there's been a lot of talk about, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have these kind of weapons, and Crimea River. I For one, I really do like Patrick Mahomes. He's an easy guy to root for and root against, depending on how you want to say it. But there's no doubting the talent. But he has enough around him, and he has this. If he's as good as we all think he is, and as Andy Reid is as good as we all think he is, they should be just fine. I still see them winning the West. The Chargers, it seems like the Chargers have been picked since the early Phillip Rivers LT days, that everyone thinks this is going to be their year. Again, like the Jets, I'll believe it when I see it. And then finally, the North, really interesting division. I do think the Steelers are sneaking up there, but I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with the Bengals, but the Ravens, to me, I go back and forth. Steve, what about your division winners for the AFC?
Yeah, I agree. Jacksonville, Buffalo. I still think Kansas City's going to win the West. Yeah, despite the delusional fan base that they got there. I saw a comment that was getting a lot of traction all over the place. Tom Brady never had such a weak supporting cast as Patrick Mahomes does on Thursday night. Yeah. And I started laughing.
Seen that going around.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, fast forward to or flash back to 2013, then come talk to me.
2006.
You remember that Saints game?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that Brady came back. Where's the beef? I mean,
yeah, Kenbrell Tompkins, Aaron Dobson, and Austin Collie.
Yeah,
yeah.
With Michael,
with all due respect, to those guys, but
yeah,
seriously,
that was. I mean, come on,
right?
But anyway, yeah, and Mahomes is a talent, and I think he gets them over the hump in the division. In the North, I'm kind of going back and forth between the Ravens and the Bengals. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be the Ravens this year. Okay. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lamar's right there. Claire, the only reason I was actually going to ask you to come on this week, the only reason I didn't is because I literally called Steve this morning. I haven't been feeling good the last 24 hours or so. And so I was up in the air on whether I was going to be able to do the show and what time we were going to do it. I know there's a time change for you. So honestly, that's the only reason but we'll get you on in the next week or two. I definitely want to have you on soon. But if you disagree with me, you can message in what you disagree with, so I can argue with you on air. For the NFC, Steve, for one, the AFC is just loaded. The NFC, some really talented teams, but it's nothing like the AFC, certainly. The NFC North, to me, you could talk me into the Lions, Vikings, or Packers winning that division. It really just is going to come down to, the Lions have really kind of ascended and they have a lot of momentum, but can they carry over last year to this year? The Vikings, their defense is really questionable, but I think on paper it makes more sense for them to win the division than the other team I'll talk about, which is the Packers. The only way the Packers win this division is if Jordan Love can. He doesn't have to be, like a superstar, but he has to be representative. So we'll see how he looks in his first year. He's an unknown, and we just don't really know. And the Bears, I think, have added some talent, but I don't think that they're poised to win that division, in my opinion. So, for me, I'll go with the Vikings for the North. For the East, I have the Eagles. Just an incredible job that Howie Roseman has done with that team. It's just, incredible. And very tough division as well. The South is really intriguing. I'm going to go with the Saints. I just think the Buccaneers are really, really rebuilding right now. The Panthers are sneaky. In that division. And I think that if Bryce Young plays well, I think they could put some things together and actually surprise some people. And then for the West, Steve, I'm going with the 49ers. The Seahawks will I'm sure they'll make a playoff push. And the Rams and Cardinals, I'm just not buying the Rams, and the Cardinals are an absolute dumpster fire. So 49ers for me for the West. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with all four of those, actually. And I think it'll come down again to the Eagles and 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And I hope I'm not jumping the gun there. You
Hey,
know.
by the way, did you see, and this is totally off topic, did you see that weird Chandler Jones stuff going around?
Yes. Oh, actually, let me rephrase that. I disagree with one because I think the Lions are going to win the division.
Oh, okay. There you go. You're a believer in what Detroit is doing over there.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way they ended the season. I think they're getting it together. I think they believe in their coach, and I don't know. I just I have a feeling that they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. Maybe not tonight, but a lot of people. But
I'm really fascinated to see how they use Jamar Gibbs. He's a player that I really liked coming out. A lot of people did. It was going to be really hard to justify him going in the first round, certainly for the Patriots. But I think that if they use him in that running back, open space, slot receiver way, I think he could be electric. And people forget too they have Jameson Williams too coming back from
yeah,
that knee injury now a year removed from that. So fascinating team. They've done a really nice job drafting and getting a nice young core together. They've
yeah.
hit on a lot of
When
players.
when have you heard that with the Lions?
Yeah, no, it's been a while. It's been a while. As far as who I think the Super Bowl predictions, I guess, talking about the championship games. It's a boring pick. I'm going Bengals and Chiefs in the AFC. I'll tell you, I will say this. I will call myself a fraud. I really don't believe that, but I just, there's so many teams in the AFC. I just can't, I just feel like there's going to be a dark horse a little bit in this conference. It's going to come out and surprise a lot of people. But I just think that right now, as good as the AFC is top to bottom, I still just look at, and it was true with Brady for a long time. And I'm not saying Mahomes is necessarily Brady, but he's the best player in the league. And when you have that kind of talent there, you're always in the mix. And, the Bengals are going to, and both teams are playing in tough divisions, but the Bengals, they're stacked at their, their skill position players. They have a really good defense. There's a lot to like. And I just loved Joe Burrow's demeanor. I just like the way he carries himself. I like a lot of teams in the AFC East, but I just don't see them getting over the hump. I think that sneakily, before I go to the NFC, I think Sean McDermott is on the hot seat big time this year. And I think there's a lot of pressure in Buffalo. And if it goes south for whatever reason, I think they're tuned for a big shakeup over there because they're not building a new stadium in Buffalo if they don't have Josh Allen. And a lot of people, including their fans, all believe that they're close. And Leslie Frazier took a leave of absence as the defensive coordinator for the year for Sean McDermott to take over. If Sean McDermott doesn't get it done this year, I think they're in trouble. But for the NFC, I'm just going 49ers and Eagles. I just think they're just so good. And I have the Eagles and the Chiefs, Steve, in the Super Bowl again. I just think they're the two best teams. But I have the Eagles winning this year. I think they're the best team, top to bottom, in the entire league.
Yeah, well, in the AFC, I'm going to go with the Chiefs and Jaguars.
Really? Okay. I like it.
Yeah. Because I do think they're building a winner down there in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence has definitely taken a step forward. Last year I thought he was really, really good, and I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So in the Super Bowl this year, I already told you, the NFC teams, that's a kind of a no-brainer as long as both teams stay healthy. I'm going to go with the 49ers over the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Wow. That would be that. I'll tell you, Jacksonville's the exact kind of team that I see like coming out of the AFC East. We're all talking about how loaded it is in so many areas. And I could see a team like Jacksonville coming out of nowhere. They're playing in, I would say, a relatively easy division. Given the circumstances there, I think the Titans will be competitive, but ultimately probably only win around 6 or 7 games. And I just think the Colts and the Texans are going to be, lower than that. So to me, the Jaguars are a team where I could be like, okay, that would make sense from a sneaky kind of sneak in. The old banana in the tailpipe. I like it. I like it. MVP for me, Steve, I went with Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to have a really good year. I think the Eagles are going to be one of the best teams. I did consider Mahomes because I think that if the narrative going around right now is that he doesn't have a lot around him and they have a good year, then I could see that. But I don't know. Even though I picked them to go to the Super Bowl, I still think that they will have an up and down year a little bit. And Travis Kelce, phenomenal player again, but he's banged up now. He is 34. At some point, that's going to slow down a little bit. So he's really everything that gets that offense to move. And without him, if he's not able to stay healthy for the season, I really don't think those receivers will be enough. I think it'll be just not going enough here. But for MVP, I have Hurts. Offensive Player of the Year. Man, I go back and forth on this. I guess I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with Justin Jefferson here. Defensive Player, Micah Parsons. I'd love to watch him play. Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. I need a second on. I didn't write these down. I need to think about it. So why don't you share yours while I think about it for a second?
Well, MVP, I think you're right. It's going to be Jalen Hurts. And I agree with you. I think the Eagles are the most top to bottom talented team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But last year, they were really healthy for most of the year. And I think that's, going to rebound on them a little bit this year. I know the 49ers lost their, 3 quarterbacks, but they still made it to the conference championship. I think they'll be a little more healthier this year than the Eagles will at the end of the season. That's why I'm going with them. But I think Hurts is fantastic. I think it'll be his year to win the MVP. Offensive Player of the Year, I was leaning somewhere else, but I like your pick of Justin Jefferson. But I'll tell you who I like, and that's McCaffrey from the Niners.
Yeah, he's going to be up there. The only thing that worries me about that pick, Steve, because I thought about McCaffrey. The only thing that worries me a little bit is, he was amazing. He was amazing with the 49ers last year, but people forget he was managed quite a bit. I think they're going to really kind of manage him throughout the year. And when I say manage, I just don't know. I think he'll be on some kind of a snap count so they don't burn him out, for the stretch. That's just my opinion.
But yeah, I when I watched him go over to the Niners, he was healthy down the stretch last year, and he was fantastic. And I think that's why I'm going to go with him. I think he's motivated this year. He came close to realizing how Super Bowl was. I like Chris's pick, Alabama Mac Jones. I don't think Mac's quite there yet. Defensive Player of the Year, I like your pick with Parsons. I think, there'll be a couple of guys that you could go that way.
Sure.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going with Jalen Carter of the Eagles.
That's who I'm kind of leaning towards as well.
Offensive Rookie of the Year, going out on a limb here, Pop Douglas.
Pop Douglas.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I'm going chalk. He's throwing out the Jaguars, Pop Douglas. I like it. Okay, I need to spice it up a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm not doing it now. My defensive player Rookie of the Year, I agree with you on Jalen Carter. For me, offense, I think I'm either going to go Bijan Robinson or Anthony Richardson. I would throw Jahmyr Gibbs in that conversation because I think that he could be very electric with the ball in his hands. And I think all three of those. For the sake of an argument, I'll go Bijan Robinson. He's a tremendous player. And I know they have Cordarrelle Patterson, in the running game, in the passing game, but Bijan's going to get a ton of work. Did you see, by the way, the Atlanta Falcons on their depth chart? They listed Cordarrelle Patterson as a quote unquote joker. That was his position.
I like that. No,
I
I
love it.
hadn't seen that.
I love it.
You know, my second pick for offensive rookie of the year was Bryce Young.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go out on a limb and, hey, you know, I think Pop Douglas they've been keeping him under wraps all preseason. And, you know, we don't know. I mean, we don't know, but.
No, we don't know. Hey, if you went out on a limb, I respect it. I mean, it's certainly better than the chalk answers I gave. Clearly, everybody in the comments agree with me, including Claire, obviously. But so I'm trying to think of any other predictions. I mean, I have a weird feeling. Steve, that this is going to be a year that there's going to be some surprises around the league. It just seemed, and I'm falling into the trap. So I'm, like I said earlier, I'm calling myself a fraud, and I'm sure I'll call myself out later because I like to be accountable. But it seems so obvious, some of these things that we're talking about. I mean, but I just that's why I really like your Jaguars pick. I just think it could be something like that kind of comes out. Everything just seems so obvious, and usually that's not the case, especially with how scripted the NFL is. Yeah. Obviously, I'm just kidding into that joke. But any other thoughts before we hit a quick break and then flip over to the preview?
No, I mean, I think, you know, every season has its own personality, kind of.
Yeah.
And I think this one is going to be a really good, fun season. You know, like you said, the AFC's loaded, and I don't think anyone can sit there and hang their hat that, oh, we're going to win 12 or 13 games in the AFC. I don't think you can do that because there's so many good teams. So,
so I'm just saying here that Claire wants it to be known that she is not agreeing with me. Okay. So you and everybody else, apparently, and Chris, I have no idea when the last time she agreed with me. Probably 3 or 4 shows ago. It's late for her. She's been drinking. You know, she doesn't know what she's listening to. I'm just kidding. But I will say this though, Steve, too. I'm excited for the season because I do think there's a lot of curveballs. For example, you're talking about Bryce Young as a kind of a dark horse for offensive rookie of the year. I think the Panthers are up there. They have a good defense. They did get rid of CMC and they got rid of DJ Moore. But I really like Jonathan Mingo coming out of Ole Miss in that draft, and I think he could be a fun player to watch. And Bryce Young's in a good system with a good coach that understands quarterbacks and stuff. So that, to me, I picked the Saints out of that because they still have some players there. And even though Derek Carr is kind of a wishy-washy, sometimes he looks great, sometimes he looks, very normal, I still think that he's better than what they've had. They have some weapons down there, like a Chris Olave, I think is going to take a leap forward this year, and Derek Carr will be a big reason for that. So that's why I'm, kind of leaning towards something like that. But let's step aside really quick for podcast purposes, and then we'll be back right after this. All right, we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2, and Steve and I have been talking about our NFL season predictions. We talked about the Jack Jones legal situation kind of off the top, but it is time, Steve, for our Patriots and Eagles preview. Week 1 is here. We are ready to go, and I'm excited for it. Our first preview of the season. I will say this real quick. Please, again, subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like, share, and leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. And those who have subscribed and left comments, we do appreciate it sincerely. Steve, by the way, before we do the preview, tell people about your article that you wrote on PatsFans.com and if you want to puff that out a little bit.
Yeah, I wrote my first week 1 key matchups between the Patriots and the Eagles. And week 1 is usually the toughest one because, again, the Patriots starters played very little in the preseason, and the Eagles starters played possibly even less.
The Eagles didn't play. Their starters didn't play almost any of the preseason, and the Patriots starters played about 3 series. So both teams taking a very different approach.
Right. And, and the Eagles had a lot of turnover last year. They have a new defensive coordinator. They have a new offensive coordinator. They lost 7 starters from last year, including 5 starters on the defense. So you have to take all that in consideration when you're talking week 1 in a summer where your starters didn't play much and they weren't showing much. The Patriots didn't show much either. They would keeping things under wraps. So there's that element of unknown that you're dealing with in week 1 because, teams don't have tape on you. So, that's when you see some crazy upsets. And I think because of that, the Patriots have a shot at upsetting Philadelphia this week. Just because it's week 1. If you ask me, would the Patriots have a shot at week 5? I would say no, because Philadelphia, we both agree they're the most talented football team in the league. And I think they're going to be outstanding this year. But, week 1, you never really know. And there's that element of surprise that everybody goes through. I mean, we've seen this year after year. There's so many upsets on week 1. And with the turnover that they had, 2 new coordinators, and you don't have your starters playing, we could see some hiccups in this game.
Definitely could. And I think week 1 and week 2 are extremely difficult for a lot of different, reasons. I always tell, obviously sports betting kind of being much bigger now than it used to be. I've had this conversation with some people over the weekend. Week 1 is tricky if you're going to bet on, do fantasy football, or give a prediction for a game. Week 2 is very hard as well because you don't know who fooled you from the prior week. And like we started the show, you don't know who's going to be, as good or bad as you think they are going into the season. It's always a little different. So it'll be interesting. I did just realize something, Steve. I made an incredible Goldman, and we did not give our Patriots predictions for the year. So
I thought we were going to do that last.
So that's how I'm going to spin it. We are going to do that to end the show.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will spend the last couple of minutes doing our season predictions. But as far as this game goes, Steve, what a very challenging start for the Patriots week 1. I think a lot of people would be worried about the Patriots cornerback depth and the offensive line, and they're going against an incredibly difficult front 7 matchup in the Philadelphia Eagles that has power, that has speed, athleticism, led the league in sacks last year, added one of the best players in college football to that front. And then on the flip side, the cornerbacks, you have a lot of younger players in that cornerback room, and you're going up against A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert's a really good, tight end. They have a lot of speed. And the thing that impressed me most about the Eagles last year, and Nick Sirianni specifically, was that they always seem to just get into a nice rhythm in every game. And they are I feel like almost impossible to stop when they're on that kind of schedule, Steve. They get into that rhythm. You look back into last year, they didn't even see a lot of third downs. They were pretty much like they only needed the first 2, and they just kept rolling. And if the Patriots allow that to happen early in this game, I think it's going to be a long afternoon. If they can do a good enough job up front, because I don't think the Eagles will blitz. They're not a big blitzing team, or at least they weren't last year. And I don't think they really necessarily need to. The Patriots offensive line hasn't played a lot. There's some unknowns there. You send 4 or 5 guys, and I think you just drop everybody back and kind of feel out the Patriots. I think the Patriots' best bets in this game, Steve, are to, for one, I think the first biggest thing for me is just trying to get them off that schedule, out of that rhythm.
Right. And that's what I wrote about. Actually, that's my first key is the Eagles RPOs set the tone. Mm-hmm. And it all starts with Jalen Hurts. And, teams play them in zone because they want to try to stop that RPO. They eviscerate zone coverage in that. And it puts the linebackers in a really bad position because now they're in no man's land. They have to, they're in a no-win situation where, they're undecided. Do I play run? Do I play pass? And you have to get penetration inside, by your big guys on the line, for them to, to take that away. You're not going to completely take it away, but if you can slow down the RPOs on first and second down, then, I wrote, you play man coverage, even against those guys, you have a better shot at defending them if they're in third and long playing man than you would, playing zone against that team, because they eat it up. But, the other thing to remember is the Patriots pass rush. Now, it wasn't even close to the Eagles in terms of sacks. The Eagles had 70 sacks last year. Kansas City was second with 55, and the Patriots and Cowboys were tied for third at 54. I mean, that's an incredible amount of sacks. Now, they did lose Jason Hargrave, but they got Jalen Carter. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
Well, and, the other thing, too, is I would say a lot of teams around the league right now, including the Patriots, are struggling with quality offensive linemen. And the Eagles are one of those few teams that really, on paper, look to have a pretty strong offensive line. So if their offensive line is pretty strong and one of the better ones in the league, that's going to mitigate some of that Patriots pass rush there too.
But there's also a question unknown on theirs, because they lost Isaac Sumualo, I think it was pronounced.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, he was a 10-year vet, outstanding, one of the best right guards in the business. They lost him, and they're, playing a guy that only had a handful of snaps in his NFL career.
Right.
So, there's that question unknown for him moving forward. So, when I look at this Eagles offense, though, it all comes down to the RPOs. You have to slow them down, not stop it, because you're not going to stop it. But if you can slow it down enough where they're getting in third and long situations, you have a puncher's chance of getting off the field. And a lot of that is going to have to be an excellent game plan. And they need penetration up front. I thought, one of the things that I wrote, I know Bill usually favors the veterans, especially early in the season. But I wonder if he'll roll the dice on having athletic guys like Keon White and Marte Mapu out on the field on Sunday, in a lot of different situations, especially early downs, because they need that athleticism. I mean, Hurts had 760 yards rushing and 13 touchdowns. And, you have to find a way to slow that down.
I would love for them to use Mapu next to Bentley in the middle of that defense a lot, because it's kind of like a thunder lightning kind of situation there. And you have your traditional tackler in Bentley, your kind of stout, guy against the run, versus Mapu, who just was a missile in the short time we saw him in the preseason. The little bit that we did see of him, he played some safety in early downs and linebacker on like third downs. I still think that's probably a situation we're going to see. I am actually fascinated on how I think the chess match of what Bill decides to do with the playing time for the safeties is interesting. How are they used? Who's playing deep free safety with McCourty gone? I think Jabril Peppers is poised for a good year. How is he utilized? What's their plan for Mapu? It's going to be a really, really tough go. Like you said, it's a good thing they've had so long to prepare for the Eagles, because they need it. And we know health is so important in that league, and you're not going to get much healthier than week one. So it's like, all right, well, this is probably a good time, Steve. I was still a little surprised. The Eagles were favored by 3.5. I thought it would honestly be a little bit bigger. I thought that the Eagles, I know NFL spreads aren't like college, and it's, I'm not trying to totally dislike their chances, but I put it this way. If the Patriots win this game, I think we're coming out of it saying, wow, they had a really good defensive game plan. There's probably some turnovers involved, and the offense really looked like it was a totally different group than what we saw last time they were on the field. If the Eagles are able to come out on schedule with those RPOs, not turn that ball over, and win in the trenches like they would on paper, I think the Patriots lose this game by 10 to 14 points. And I don't really think it'll be that close. So again, I mean, it's too early. We'll get to our predictions and stuff, and we'll get to our keys specifically. But I'm just highlighting that in a game like this, you're going to be challenged, as the Patriot. From a Patriots perspective, you're going to be challenged in some of your biggest deficiencies on paper. That we've all been talking about for months now, and you're going to be challenged right out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're playing the reigning NFC champions, and they're a really, really good football team. But we've seen crazier stuff than this. But I do want to say I think the Patriots' offense is going to be much better than people are giving them credit for. Now, that being said, I'm saying that if the offensive line is intact on Sunday, Trent Brown, if they roll out Trent Brown, Cole Strange, David Andrews, Michael Onwenu, and possibly even Calvin Anderson, then I think the offense is going to be just fine. Not that it's going to be easy, because it's not. The Eagles have a great defensive line, probably the best in the NFL. And, that's going to be a challenge for them, especially, when you get in passing situations with Mac Jones. They have to protect them. But that's going to be a challenge. But, the Patriots have an offensive coordinator this year,
Imagine them.
Yeah, and Bill O'Brien, he's not going to dial up passes that, Mac Jones has to hold the ball for 3 or 4 seconds. That's not going to happen this week. He knows that Eagles pass rush. Everything's going to be quick based on timing, getting the ball out of Mac's hands, 2.5 seconds, making quick reads, adjustments at the line. Those are the things they didn't do last year. So I think that the Patriots offense is going to be much better than people are giving them credit for.
And to your point about the Eagles defensive line, this is not going to be an issue that's going to go away. I mean, they need to get it in gear. I mean, you could argue the first 4 opponents they face in this quarter stretch of the season, Steve, have one of the best defensive lines in the entire league. The Dolphins, the Jets, and the Cowboys. Their front defensive line, front sevens. I mean, really, really, really good groups. So if they're exposed at all this week, it worries me about what the opponents would do coming in the future coming weeks. I will say this, though, on the flip side, because I am pro-Patriots and I'll put my rose-colored glasses on. I would say the Eagles don't really have an idea of exactly what offense the Patriots are going to give them. I think that I'm sure Nick Sirianni being, and the Eagles being a forward-thinking offensive kind of modern-day minds, I'm sure they'll put their own twists on what they've done that's been successful. But I'm sure they also feel like their group, they believe in their talent level, and they think that if they execute it right, it doesn't really matter what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of people were pissed at them for that rugby-style quarterback sneak thing they did a bunch last year, but it's like I'd say the same thing they probably did. If you don't like it, stop it. That's right. The end of it. I mean, that's what it is. And sometimes as fun as it is to air out everything, sometimes the good old, just a good old quarterback sneak or shirt, a couple of guys doing a goal line drill, it's good. It's good to watch. And for the Patriots, I do think you're going to see a lot of different things on that you haven't seen them before. I think you are going to see them try to get Mac Jones into a rhythm early. I think you're going to see a lot of quick passes. I'm curious hopefully Mike Gesicki is good and ready to go. He was at practice. He's been at practice, so that is good. In fact, the only Patriots player missing from practice today, and we're recording this Thursday, is Jack Jones was the only player missing today. But I'm curious how they utilize the Henry and Gesicki, combination. How does Kendrick Bourne and what does Juju bring to the table? Devontae Parker, I am a little worried about the receiver room, Steve, with Devontae Parker having some kind of banged up a little bit. People's worried about Juju. People worried about obviously Tyquan Thornton. But I do want to mention something to you, Steve, and I'm going to get your take on this, and we'll get into our 3 keys after that. What do you think about this whole Juju Smith-Schuster knee stuff that's been going around? It seems like it's coming out a lot lately. Do you think that's something that is like a concern that's getting leaked from inside the team, or do you think that's something that someone just, it was, what is it, Albert Breer, I believe, who said it on TV, and that his knee could quote unquote explode at any time and they had to manage it a lot? Well, flat out, I would say this: the Chiefs needed that week off. I mean, Juju said it himself. He needed that week before the Super Bowl in order to play, or if it was the same that week, if there was no gap, he wouldn't have been able to play. And they had to really, really manage, that. And he had some issues flying, which on paper does give me a little concern because they do have some very long flights this year, including going to Germany. And if his knee has to be managed, well, you signed him for 3 years for pretty big money to get a lot of volume. At the same time, Steve, I would say this: it's been, 6-7 months since that knee issue in Kansas City. I would hope that if there was anything really super long term, that the team physical and the team doctors would have caught this before signing. What are your thoughts about this whole situation?
Exactly. I mean, look, if they took a flyer on him for 1 year, then you might be able to sell me on this. But the fact that they did a physical on him and they gave him a 3-year deal, that's telling me that they expect his. Now, I mean, he could get another knee injury, that happens to, all of them. But if you're asking me right now, is his knee going to explode at any second? I don't buy it. And Juju, said, if anything, his knee's getting stronger now, because he had the surgery off season, and, he went through rehab, and now he's been playing, training camp and whatnot. So I think he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about that, because that was the only issue we've heard about that. Excuse me.
So, I agree. And, Chris sent in an interesting question: how much of a factor will Matt Patricia be for the Eagles on Sunday? I don't really think a whole lot, Chris. For one, from an offensive standpoint, I think that there's going to be so much that's going to be different. I think they really, in my honest opinion, I think Mac Jones and Bill Belichick had like a come to Jesus moment, in my opinion, about last year. And they probably had an honest conversation about Bill. Probably, obviously he didn't say it too much. He's not going to throw Matt under the bus, who's a friend. Okay. But they told you how they felt about last year by the way that they moved on from Matt, and Matt went to the Eagles to go ahead and, to be an advisor and to do those kind of things. Bill knew that he kind of screwed up, which is why he didn't bring him back. And I'm sure he didn't want to throw dirt on his friend anyway on the way out the door. But I'm sure Mac and Bill had some kind of come to Jesus moment in the offseason. And Bill O'Brien is probably going to take a mix of what he's done, from Houston, his first stint in New England, from Penn State, from Alabama, and he's going to look at what things have worked, what things haven't. I think he's going to be more forward thinking, and I think he's going to try to blend as much of what Mac Jones did at Alabama and what he did in his first year and try to blend it together. I really don't think Patricia is going to factor in a whole lot to me. I think that they kind of stripped it down and kind of built it back up from the beginning. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a factor in this week because, like you said, Bill O'Brien's coming in. He installed a completely new offense that Matt doesn't know. So, other than, Patricia was in the building and didn't get along with Mac Jones last year, I don't think he's going to be a factor. I think, as you said, Belichick and Jones, I don't know if they had a come to Jesus meeting, but I think once Bill O'Brien got in the building, Bill turned everything over offensively to him like he would do with Josh McDaniel. And he can see that Mac Jones is much more comfortable with O'Brien. He trusts him, and they're all getting along now. There's smiles out on the practice field. There's none of that frustration that we saw even in mini camp and training camp last year. And I think that's all he needs, and Mac is taking over as a leader. We've heard that more than once from different players. So I think it's all good there, not right now. And of course, it will depend on how the year turns out. But I like, as I've said many times already, I think this offense is going to be a lot better than people are giving him credit for.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And when I say come to Jesus moment,
I know what you mean.
I guess I really just think that obviously we know how Mac felt about last year. It was obvious on the field without even being inside the building. He was frustrated. He should be frustrated. We've gone down that road. We've talked about it. I think that Bill probably just said to him, if I had to guess, and it's a total guess, he probably said something along the lines of, look, I screwed up. I was trying something. It didn't work out. But he's like, he probably told Mac, like, if you want to be a franchise quarterback, you have to, conduct yourself, in a certain way, in a certain manner. And that's on the field, off the field. That's, not only how you play, but behavior. I'm sure it was something along those lines, Steve. I without knowing it, that's kind of what, I would say again, the Church of Belichick. Yes. There you go.
That's a great one.
Steve, let's go ahead and talk about our 3 keys to victory, our prediction for the game, and then we'll go into our Patriots season prediction to end the show. Okay. 3 keys to victory. I think we've already talked about the first one. Why don't you just dive right into it?
Yeah, to me, I think they have to slow the RPOs down on early downs. Look, they're going to show some different looks and combinations and see what works for them. But the main thing is they have to find a way to slow that stuff down. And I think playing zone coverage against this team is just and it sounds crazy because with the receivers that they have in their tight end, I think you have to play man to man, and you have to roll the dice with this, because if you play zone, I think that Hurts is going to eat them up. My second key is offensively. Now, you talked about the Eagles getting on a rhythm. I think the Patriots have to find a way to do that. They're going to mix in some of their own RPOs and play action under center for Mac. And I think that it all stems from the offensive line. They have to be healthier this year. They have to be on the field on Sunday. And, the key for them, I believe, in finding a rhythm is being able to run the football. And as good as that Eagles defense was last year, they weren't particularly great at stopping the run. They gave up 4.6 yards a carry in the running game last year. Now, some of that probably stems from them being so far ahead. And if a team ran the ball in the second half, they might get 5-6 yards here and there, which the Eagles, if they're up by 21, do they really care? No. But at the same time, between Stevenson and Zeke Elliott, I think they can't. The opportunities will be there to find some running room. I do believe that, because I think they need to run it right up the middle, because I don't trust Nakobe Dean as the middle linebacker. And my third key is they have to win third down on both sides of the ball. The defense has to get off the field. They can't allow Philly to have these long, time-consuming drives and eating up the clock. And the offense, has to find a way to sustain drives. And hopefully the defense can force a turnover or two, or maybe a big play on special teams that sets them up.
What do you think the chances this game is like an hour and a half long because they both run the ball down each other's throats?
Well, I could see that. I think both teams are going to be able to run the football on Sunday.
Yep.
So, yeah, it could be a shorter game. If both teams are running it and the clock just continues to roll over, I think that, it could be a shorter game than, the Brady games took 4 hours because they were just slinging it everywhere.
Right. I watched the highlights there's been a lot of Brady highlights with him coming back home Sunday, and it was this. I was cracking up just watching that game against the Titans in the snow. That's just like an all-time. Just like Brady had like 6 touchdowns and like 368 yards. It was just like there was nothing like if there was a like a dictionary of like a football team being checked out, it was the Titans that day, and they did not want to be there. The Patriots just laid
it was
down.
cold. It was miserable.
Yeah, after like the first 3 scores, that was pretty much the end of that game. It was just classic Tom. He doesn't get enough credit for being such a bad weather quarterback. Certainly, I'm sure he does around the Patriots fans, but I think people severely underestimate one of his greatest abilities was how good he was in, he was great all the time, but especially in those colder environments. I mean, he was nails. I would say for me, 3 keys, Steve. 1, it's just about getting the Eagles kind of a little uncomfortable. Get them out of their comfort zone. The Patriots have to find a way to get them off schedule and kind of upset the apple cart a little bit. We know what they like to do. I'm sure there'll be some wrinkles, but the Patriots are really going to have to try to make an impact. You mentioned third downs. Obviously, those are important. I would say almost just as important as first down in this game. And that sounds kind of weird, but if they're able to, again, they had a lot of success last year in first and second downs and not even seeing those third downs. And obviously, I'm not discrediting your point. It's a good one. I just think that it's almost like they have to win it. Yes, winning later in the downs is important. And if they do well, if the Patriots do really well on first down, well, they still have second and third. But I think it just gets back into winning early downs on that series to upset them and not keep them off schedule, because then I think there'll be one of those things where they'll be like RPO, first down. All of a sudden, the Patriots defense is going one way and the Eagles are going the other, and I just think that you're just off balance and you're in trouble. So that, to me, worries me. I think winning in the trenches is absolutely crucial this week. It's going to be incredibly hard. I feel like I sound kind of negative on the Patriots for this week. I think the Patriots won't be like a really bad team throughout the year. I think they're going to be competitive, but I do think that this is one of those challenges where right out of the gate, a lot of what we've talked about over the last few months, they're going to be challenged and kind of punched in the mouth with right away. And the Eagles have a lot of things to expose some of those. And then for me, Steve, I just think if you're going to win a game like this, I have a hard time believing it's going to be straight up, but I could be convinced they win a game where there's a fumble in the backfield or a tipped ball pick, some kind of a defensive or special teams play for the Patriots. And all of a sudden you have that crowd going, there's momentum. If you can stick around and have a lead going into that first half, people are going to be amped for the Brady stuff. It's going to carry right over to that second half. And you're right in this game. I think turnovers will be a big role as always in this game. What's your prediction, Steve?
I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people envision. I think the Patriots are going to hang with them, but I think in the end, Philly is really strong, and I think Philly will pull this one out 28-20.
28-20. I'm actually going Eagles as well, 31-23. I do think the Patriots will hang around more. I do expect them to make some plays. I can envision a scenario. I definitely could envision a scenario the Patriots win, and I definitely can envision a scenario where the Patriots get absolutely rolled. If they lose badly in the trenches, if the Eagles are good with the ball and Patriots aren't able to be off schedule, I just think it's going to be a really, really long day. And it's no shame that the Eagles are one of the best teams in the league. I mean, I think I just said half an hour ago, I think they're going to win it all. So it's going to be tough out of the gate, but anything can happen week one. I do think that we're going to come away from this game probably saying, Steve, the Patriots made some good plays, just couldn't quite make enough when they needed to. But I do think I actually have some confidence that we're going to come out saying, okay, they didn't win, but the offense looks a lot better. I do feel that way. I think Mac Jones and the offense are going to look good this week. And it's going to be hard. I'm sure that offensive line is going to give up a couple of plays. If they can protect Mac and get him and they get the ball out quick, I think we're going to come away was one of those silver linings being that we're happy with what we saw from the Patriots offense.
Yeah. And, again, I could see them pulling an upset week one because there's so many unknowns in week one. And, the Eagles have no tape on the Patriots offense because I don't think that Bill O'Brien showed anything. And then one of the things that I mentioned earlier, I think that's a good comment right there.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. is that they kept Pop Douglas under wraps all preseason, and I don't think that was a mistake. I think it was on purpose. I think he's going to factor into a lot of what they do, and they want to get him the ball in space, with his speed and elusiveness. So, yeah, I like Chris's prediction better than my own.
Gotta protect Mac. It is important. And, DeMonte mentioned, ready to see Bill O'Brien work. Honestly, I'm more excited about that than I have been in a while for something like that. We all felt so frustrated with last year. I don't want to say every single Patriots fan and media person, but the large majority of those people who fall into those categories, it was a frustrating year from so many levels. And I'm excited to kind of wash our hands of that and move forward, Steve. And we haven't really talked about it, but we have a little bit. There's a lot of pressure on Mac Jones this year, to really people need to see him take that step forward. And, we want to see if he can be, kind of do that and how that works. So that will be good. Let's talk. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, the lovely Miss Cooper predicts a close Patriots win.
Yep. Yeah, I shared that comment a second ago.
I missed that one.
It's okay. So we do have the Patriots starting out 0-1 this year, Steve. But let's talk about the Patriots season prediction. How do we think the year is going to go? Give me your take.
I'm drinking the Belichick Kool-Aid. I think they're going to win 10 games, and I think they're going to be in a wild card game.
Really? Let me ask you this. Tell me, is 10 your best case scenario? Like, do you see a scenario where they win more than 10?
I could see them. I go back to last year with the offense, the complete dumpster fire that it was. They won 8 games, and they could have easily won 11. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about that in the offseason.
We did.
Now, I understand that the other teams in the AFC East have gotten better, especially the Dolphins and the Jets.
Yep, the schedule's harder.
The schedule is harder this year. But I think the opportunity is going to be there. I'm still not sold on the Jets. I'm sorry. I've seen this movie too many times. And, the Dolphins, their offensive line isn't the greatest either. And when you have a quarterback that's already suffered major concussions, you can't afford to let that guy get hit. And, again, there's a lot of question marks there. If Tua goes down, what's going to happen to that team? So I think the Patriots finished number 2 in the division.
Okay. I like it. Steve, Steve came in and brought it today. A lot of big predictions. Bullish on the Patriots. I am not. Surprise. I'm not necessarily. Honestly, this is how I feel. The Patriots, I think, will probably win 7 or 8 games, and I think that we're going to come out of But I do think we're going to come out of the year with a lot of positives to take out of the year. I've said that from pretty much the beginning of the offseason. I think we both kind of agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we felt that they could be a better team and potentially have a worse record just given this year. I think that for the Patriots fans, I really do. I am very optimistic on the Bill O'Brien edition and what he's going to do with Mac Jones. I am optimistic we're going to see Mac Jones get back to, where we think he could be. And I think we're going to have some young players play some key roles this year. I just wonder if they have enough at certain positions. I'm really worried about the offensive line. And from a receiver standpoint, I don't think that they have no, talent in that passing game or anything, but they certainly are lacking some of that elite receiver talent that is just so huge around the league right now. I mean, the league has never had the kind of pass catchers and really quarterbacks that they've had, ever. It's so dynamic. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I wonder if we're going to be coming away saying, hey, they only won 7 or 8 games, but they were really, even more than last year, where it felt like they were going up against a couple of teams at times that were missing some big pieces, or it came down to a special teams play or something. I think we're going to be coming out of this actually more positive than we think, given my prediction. I think that they could hit that 10-win mark, Steve, as you mentioned. I do think I would say, to add to that, the only way I feel they get there is if we see Mac make a very substantial step forward. And I'm hopeful for that. I am. But I do think it's going to, if they're going to get to that point, he has to be the best we've seen him.
Yeah. And I think he's going to improve over his rookie season. If just throw out last year.
Yeah.
And with the receivers, the main thing for me, I want to see him get everybody involved. That means they're spreading the ball around. And what happens if they don't have a receiver that has 800 yards, but they have 5 guys with 600 yards? You know what I mean? Then we'll come away saying, look, nobody had an elite year, but everyone had a really solid year. And I think if you have that, you know what I mean? Then we're going to come away saying this team scored some points this year.
Yep.
And I think Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas are going to play huge roles in the passing game. We'll see when Tyquan Thornton comes back if he can crack the lineup and start making some plays.
I'm really high on Kendrick Bourne, by the way, too. I think Kendrick Bourne I think we're going to come out of this season thinking this was Kendrick Bourne's best year. He says he's in the best shape of his life. He looks phenomenal. He looks like he's in incredible shape. Bill made a comment as much as well. And I just think the opportunity is there for him. And there were so many times last year where it just didn't, like so many other things, it didn't seem to make sense, Steve, why he wasn't in the mix more. And I just think he's going to be in this mix here, especially if Devontae Parker has some nagging injuries or Tyquan Thornton has injuries again in his second year. And we have some question marks. I'm not sure about Douglas, but because we haven't seen enough of him, but I am fascinated to see him at some point because, as you mentioned, the team really did keep him under wraps a lot this year. So it will be, fascinating to see what he brings to the table. But, for me, I just think in order to get to that 9-10 win, mark, I think that you're going to have Mac Jones do something that we haven't really had him do, which is really kind of take the reins and have kind of a couple of his moments this year. And I would love to see that. Would absolutely love to see that. I just think that this team there's some holes on paper. Again, the game isn't played on paper, but there's some holes on paper that this team is going to be challenged with early. And even if they struggle a little bit out of the gate, I still feel like they are going to be very competitive throughout the course of the season. I saw some people predicting them to win only 5 or 6 games. I have a really hard time envisioning them. I know I said 7-8. I have a really hard time thinking 6 games or less. I really do. I just think their defense is very good. The special teams are good. And I just don't. That's say what you want about Bill Belichick. I just give him more credit than that. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and the special teams were awful last year, with the exception of Marcus Jones.
Sure.
And I expect to see them much better this year. Now, granted, we have 2 rookie kickers, to watch in their first game, and anything can happen, as you know, when it comes to rookies. But I think these guys are going to be. I think they're going to be very good, and I think the special teams is going to be much, much better. And they might need Marcus Jones to pull out a game for them where they're either tied or slightly behind, and gives them a big boost. I mean, we know he's capable of that. So, that's why I think they might steal a few games from teams that are considered, better than they are this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Steve, I want to go ahead and give a shout out. We had a lot of participation on today's show, which is always exciting, always fun. And we appreciate everyone who tuned in live, sent in comments. We tried to get to as many of them as we could. I want to, again, mention, please check out PatsFans.com. A lot of great content, including what Steve has contributed, Ian Logan, everybody over at PatsFans.com always does some nice content. I want to give a shout out to our other host, Russ Goldman, who's been doing shows, So we've been trying to, from our Patriots 4th and 2, give you multiple shows per week, some different angles, some different thoughts, and stuff like that. So please check that out as well. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It really does make a big difference for us, and it does help other Patriots fans find us, which we love to go ahead and bring new people in as often as we can. Sorry, everybody, that Steve was so negative today, but we'll try to get him to turn around for next week.
I'm always positive at the beginning of the year.
Certainly more than I was today. I feel like I came off a little, maybe because my light's not on, it's a little dark in here. Maybe I need to, I'll bring some more light, some more energy.
I remember when, when Brady was here, my season prediction was always very boring because I was like, another 12-4 season. 12-4.
12-4.
Every year I predicted 12-4.
I will tell you also, it bothers me more than I care to admit that the regular season is an odd number of games. It bothers me that we don't have like the easy 12-4. Now it's like 9-8. I'm like, I don't like that at all. No. The only thing nice is that you can't go 500. You got to be. I mean, I guess the Steelers technically did it with the 8-8-1, but still. So Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, but I do think the Steelers actually are going to be a pretty good team this year.
I think they're going to be a very good team this year. That division's going to be
tough.
Yep.
Tough.
It always is tough. But
I mean, again, the NFC North, the AFC North, the AFC West, and the AFC East are all very, very competitive. It's the South, and really the South is pretty much the Jaguars to lose, in my opinion. So it's the other three are all stacked. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch. I'm really excited. Who do you got tonight, Steve? Who do you got? Chiefs, Lions. What do you think?
Yeah, I sat there and said the Lions are going to win the division, but I think the Chiefs, even though Patrick Mahomes has never had such a depleted
thoughts and prayers to the Mahomes.
I like Kansas City tonight in a close one. I think it's going to be close.
I think it will be closer than people thought, especially if Travis Kelce doesn't play. I open that door for the Lions to win, but I always just think at home, banner going up, they're going to have some energy. Mahomes, I want to say it's going to be funny because I think Mahomes has had 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in season openers, but Jared Goff is actually 6-0 also in season openers, which I think is kind of random. So we'll see. Something's got to give, Steve. I'm going with the Chiefs, but in a close one. But I think it will be a good game. I'm excited to watch. So
yeah,
thank you to everyone.
The Lions are going to look good.
Yeah, I'm interested. They'll bite a couple kneecaps off, apparently. So thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week, I'd say probably Wednesday. We'll aim for, but we'll play off our work schedules and we'll post online. But feel free to follow us on Twitter if you're watching right now, and we'll interact during the week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for coming in.